PR Connections Radio presents.
Welcome to Vegas Hockey Hub here on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. And on this edition of Vegas Hockey Hub, we are going to be answering some questions. So through our social media content, through our YouTube channel, through all of the forms of communication that we have with everyone all around the world, we have kind of compiled a list of questions that people have, and I was going to be answering it here on Vegas Hockey Hub. Now, I will say that majority of these questions are involving your Vegas Golden Knights. If I recall, I think there's, one or two questions that are involving the Henderson Silver Knights. We'll try to answer that on the back end. But when it comes to your Vegas Golden Knights, there are some questions that need to be answered. And here on Vegas Hockey Hub, we will be trying to answer those questions. So today we are discussing the Vegas Golden Knights roster and really just kind of doing a questions and answers kind of situation. We did this last year around the same time frame that we're uploading this video. So it's going to be a fun episode, and we're going to talk about everything here on Vegas Hockey Hub with your host, Ian Rachiele. Now, starting this out, we're going to go to the first question, and it is, how likely is Nicholas Waugh going to become a top six forward with the Vegas Golden Knights? More importantly, I think really what this question is asking is, when it comes to Nicholas Waugh, we kind of saw that this guy, he played on the first line a little bit, not this year, but this past season before, that Nicholas Waugh was on that first line when, Jack Eichel got hurt. He was on that first line, contributed. He scored a decent amount of goals. And I think really this is kind of a positive question and really trying to see, is there a chance that Nicholas Waugh could eventually down the line become a top six forward? And I'm going to answer this kind of in a two-part answer. Now, the first answer is going to be, do I think that Nicholas Waugh has the talent to be a top six forward? I will say that when it comes to his goal scoring and him passing the puck and contributing, I think that Nicholas Waugh has shown flashes of that talent of being a top six guy. But the issue that the Vegas Golden Knights have, and the reason why I'm going to lean towards no with this question, is the Vegas Golden Knights center position is stacked, okay? Not only do you have a superstar in Jack Eichel, who, when he is healthy and when he is on the roster, will be your number one center with the Vegas Golden Knights. That kind of takes up that spot. And like we alluded to, if it hadn't been for Jack Eichel getting hurt, not this year, but the year previously, when it comes to Nicholas Waugh, he only got really to be on that top six because the amount of injuries that stacked up with the Vegas Golden Knights around that January, February mark. Now, I will say, do I think Nicholas Waugh could become a top six forward if he left the Golden Knights and went somewhere else? It depends on what team. There are some teams in the NHL that don't have that center depth that the Vegas Golden Knights have. But back to the Vegas Golden Knights. Jack Eichel, that's your first line center. Tomas Hertl will be that second line center. And we're going to talk about more about Tomas Hertl if there was a question about him. But then you have William Karlsson, who's still here, a veteran, been here for so many years, multiple seasons. He's been on the Golden Knights, a misfit. So they're not going to really move on from him. So when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights, I don't think it's the fact that Nicholas Waugh could be this guy that would have the talent. I'm going to sit here and say that when it comes to Nicholas Waugh, the center depth is the main reason why he will not be a top six forward here in Vegas. So that's kind of a two-part answer there. But for Nicholas Waugh, eventually if he left the Golden Knights and went somewhere else, would he maybe be a top six forward, or would he even, kind of move up into a middle six forward kind of role? Maybe. But as long as he's on the Vegas Golden Knights, and they did sign him to a long-term deal a while ago, he is going to be in Vegas for the foreseeable future. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But Yeah, this is a good question. I think this kind of backs on the idea that we saw when Jack Eichel got hurt, that they trusted Nicholas Waugh to be a top six forward. And we even saw at the beginning, even the beginning of this season, we saw that he was on the second line for the Vegas Golden Knights. So when it comes to Nicholas Waugh, it's not insane to say that he could be a top six forward. But, even in that situation, when he was on the second line, they moved Tomas Hertl over to the wing in order for him to be that second line center. So, I just, once again, there has to be a lot of, leaps and a lot of loops that would have to go through for him to be a top six forward. Now, continuing to answer these questions, when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights roster, and, with all the new names and new faces and all the brand new people for 24-25, one of the interesting names is Alexander Holtz. Obviously, they got him in the draft, New Jersey Devils. They trade him to the Vegas Golden Knights. And a question that was asked is, what's Vegas going to do with Alexander Holtz? And this is going to be, once again, a two-part answer. The first part is going to be when it comes to Alexander Holtz in terms of the present day. And then the second part is going to be Alexander Holtz in the future. Now, what I think Vegas is going to do in the present day is that, when it comes to Alexander Holtz, he is a middle six forward, all right? He is not the top six forward that a lot of people were hoping he was going to be when he got drafted so high by New Jersey Devils. Also in present day, Alexander Holtz, this is a guy who is still young, someone who, Vegas Golden Knights, they can have in between the NHL and AHL. He could be in Henderson Silver Knights organization. And, this is going to be somebody that, second line, third line. I mean, I'm going to say unless injuries take effect, first line, but that, is worst case scenario. But when it comes to Alexander Holtz, being a middle six forward is kind of what going to be his role. And let's just say that if you're a healthy scratch, that means that he would still be on the roster, that there still will be a roster spot for a guy like Alexander Holtz if you are a healthy scratch, depending on what Bruce Cassidy wants to do. So with Alexander Holtz, that's the answer to the present day part of it, is that he's a middle six forward. He's somebody that can, kind of be on whatever line Bruce Cassidy has to have him be. He can also be a healthy scratch for the Vegas Golden Knights with the amount of forwards that are on the roster. He could be a healthy scratch if need be. And worst case scenario, he's in Henderson, he's in the AHL, and he is on that roster with the Silver Knights. Now, the second part of this answer about what Vegas is going to do with Alexander Holtz, this is leaning towards the future because he is an RFA. Essentially, Vegas got him for 1 year with a possible team option, meaning that they could bring him back if they want to. And really, to answer that question, it just depends on if Bruce Cassidy, Kelly McCrimmon, and George McPhee see a potential future with Alexander Holtz. Because you got to remember, they traded essentially Paul Cotter and a mid-level pick to New Jersey, and they get back Akira Schmid, who is going to be part of the Vegas Golden Knights, going to be part of the Henderson Silver Knights, that whole situation we saw with Akira Schmid. But Alexander Holtz is a question mark. He's kind of just laying there and just kind of in the middle, just far out. So for the Vegas Golden Knights, I think that they would probably give him a 1 year deal if they did want to bring him back. He's not going to be somebody like a Pavel Dorofeyev, for example, a player that is going to take priority in this upcoming offseason when they get to that point. They're still, a little bit away from that point in time. But when it comes to Alexander Holtz, in terms of the future, it just honestly depends if A, he is willing to play at a certain role that Bruce Cassidy wants, and B, if McCrimmon and McPhee can figure out if he is worth coming back in the future. So this is a good question, and I just want to answer this real quick about what Vegas is going to do with Alexander Holtz, because, with him coming over for the New Jersey Devils, a lot of hype surrounding Alexander Holtz. But, it'll just be curious to see what his future holds, once this season closes and they do get to the offseason, and with him being a RFA and being on that list. Now, continuing with the questions, because we are discussing the Vegas Golden Knights roster here on Vegas Hockey Hub, going over a few questions that are, kind of on people's minds, and some questions that even, possibly people have even said either to me or in front of me or on social media. Once again, I appreciate all the platforms that we're on at Vegas Hockey Hub. And this next question is referring to the team MVP, okay? Now, this is kind of a futuresque question, but will Tomas Hertl be the team MVP, okay? When it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights, when it comes to what is going on right now and what's going on in the future, will Tomas Hertl, will number 48 be the team MVP for the Vegas Golden Knights? Now, excluding the fact that if you are going to make a prediction, I think that it would actually be a safe bet to say that Jack Eichel could be team MVP. I mean, if Jack Eichel, racks up as many points as he is kind of expected to be, I think that he could be team MVP. Mark Stone, with his leadership skills, we have seen him kind of have, team MVP qualities throughout his tenure with the Vegas Golden Knights. We've also seen Aiden Hill, when he is on it and when he is at his full 100%, we saw what he did, just case in reference, the playoffs 2 seasons ago when he helped the Vegas Golden Knights win the Stanley Cup. Now, with Tomas Hertl being the team MVP, this is going to really depend on if he can lead the team in goals and where he is at in points at the end of this, okay? That is actually the blunt and most honest answer I can give about will Tomas Hertl be the team MVP, because we know talent-wise how great he is. We understand that when it comes to the power play, he is arguably one of the best that you can ever have on the power play. His skill he showed in San Jose, the sample size, in terms of his career, the short sample size that he has had in Vegas. He is clutch on the power play. And you know what? Even going to this route, when it comes to the playoffs, Tomas Hertl is key for a successful playoff push. Just go ask San Jose for all the years that he was there, how crucial Tomas Hertl was. I mean, Vegas Golden Knights fans, I don't think you forgot about the 2019 Stanley Cup playoffs. Now, have we? No, I don't think we have forgotten about what happened in the first round against San Jose in 2019. He was a part of that, by the way. But when it comes to Tomas Hertl, the team MVP, the actual answer and the honest, direct answer is going to be he could be team MVP if he is first or second in goals and if he is in the top 2 in points at the end of this. So that is really going to answer the question. But, if I was a betting man, if I went to, BetMGM or I went to Caesar Sportsbook and I wanted to place a bet on who the Golden Knights team MVP is going to be at the end of this, I would say Jack Eichel and Mark Stone would most likely be kind of the top 2 in terms of the odds there. But yeah, that's a really good question. Thanks for that. Now, continuing the questions, when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights roster here on Vegas Hockey Hub with your host, Ian Rachiele. We did the first 3 so far. And this next one about Brendan Brisson, now this one is kind of interesting because I'm really going to not focus that much on it. But, Brendan Brisson not working out with the Vegas Golden Knights, Henderson Silver Knights, that's the kind of situation with Brendan Brisson. He's kind of been he was floating Vegas, Henderson. But since he was a former first-round pick, there was a question about, why did Brendan Brisson not work in Vegas? I mean, what was the logic behind the Vegas Golden Knights and really when it came to Brendan Brisson? And I think really the answer to this is that not every first-round pick is going to be successful, okay? Not every first-round pick that you ever take is going to end up being a top 6 forward. Not every first-round pick is going to be an everyday starter in the middle six. And I mean, heck, not even for every first round pick is going to be a consistent NHLer. I mean, just as many hits in the first round, there's normally just as many bad selections and glorified busts that come out of the NHL draft. And really, to answer this question about Brennan Brisson, the reason why, hasn't worked in Vegas is because of the fact that there really hasn't been any indication of mass progression. All right. It really didn't seem like, working out with the Vegas Golden Knights, that there, was any chance of eventually him becoming an everyday guy in the NHL. Now, when it comes to a personal perspective, don't know him personally. When it comes to, a personal attack or slander or, for slander and for defamation, not going to go there. What I'm going to say is that I wish him well in the long-term future. I hope that he eventually becomes a everyday guy in the NHL. I hope that he eventually gets a second contract and stays in professional hockey. So, yeah, when it really comes to answer that question, I wasn't going to spend that much amount of time on it. But, him not working with the Vegas Golden Knights, him being a former first-round pick, that's kind of the question, when it comes to him. And really just the honest answer is just not every first-round pick's going to work out. And it just seemed like he just wasn't going to be it for the Vegas Golden Knights. I mean, kind of similar in a way would be Cody Glass from about 3 years ago, before Brennan Brisson was even drafted by the Vegas Golden Knights. Cody Glass just ended up being a player that, he was in the AHL for a while. He was in the NHL for a bit. He was on that middle six, third line guy was Cody Glass. And you know what? He didn't work out. They eventually moved on from him. Brennan Brisson hasn't really worked out. And, just like Cody Glass, where I wish him the best of luck in his future, and I hope that he does well. Brennan Brisson, I wish him well. I wish him the best of luck when it comes to his long-term future. I hope that eventually it works out for Brennan Brisson. Now, continuing the questions here on Vegas Hockey Hub, discussing the Vegas Golden Knights roster. And this one is about, is Tanner Pearson going to be brought back? Now, fourth line winger, PTO, and we talked about this before here on Vegas Hockey Hub, did the history of the PTO and how he is arguably the best PTO that the Vegas Golden Knights have had. And when it comes to Tanner Pearson, I think that this really has to do with what is the strength of the upcoming guys in the AHL. Now, the Henderson Silver Knights, if there are 2 or 3 guys that are in the AHL that are ready to be bottom 6 forwards next year, then I will say that there will most likely not be a reunion of Tanner Pearson and the Vegas Golden Knights. Because of his age, because of him being a veteran, him being in the NHL for a long time, former first-round pick by the LA Kings over a decade ago. I mean, Tanner Pearson, he is going to be durable. He's going to be consistent. We already know this. Anybody who's been seeing him play out in LA, he was in Montreal, around there. But to really answer this question about will Tanner Pearson be brought back to Vegas, once again, another off-season question, kind of similar to Alexander Holtz. This just really depends on McCrimmon and McPhee, and if there is a reason for Vegas to bring him back on that fourth line. I mean, it's also the same Tanner Pearson that's, also going to be rotating as a healthy scratch. I mean, I have no doubt in my mind that he'll be a healthy scratch, fourth-line winger for the Vegas Golden Knights at his current position with the Golden Knights organization. So to really answer this question, in a way, it's kind of similar to how I answered the Alexander Holtz question. I am not 100% sure if the Vegas will keep Tanner Pearson, or I'm not 100% sure if Tanner Pearson will not be back with the Vegas Golden Knights organization. It just really depends on Kelly McCrimmon and George McPhee. I think Bruce Cassidy will also have input on that as well. But yeah, I will say for Tanner Pearson, I think for him being a veteran, the questions just really going to depend on the rookie status and the readiness of guys in Henderson and if they're ready to go. But yeah, this was a good question talking about Tanner Pearson and will he be brought back to Vegas? That was that was good there. As we are talking and discussing the Vegas Golden Knights roster here on Vegas Hockey Hub. Now, the next question is actually talking about the bottom six, and in a way is a part two to the previous question, and that is there any player in the Henderson Silver Knights organization that could be trusted on that bottom six? So let's just say for some reason Tanner Pearson is let go and not brought back after this season. Is there anybody in Vegas or anybody in Henderson, AHL affiliate of Vegas, that they would say, you know what, he's ready to be on that bottom six for the Vegas Golden Knights? And outside of Giannis Roundbeer, who has really been like the 24th man for the Vegas Golden Knights, he's been good enough to be in Vegas, but he's also, still in the AHL at times. He's kind of on the top, one of the top players, for Henderson if they need him. But he's also a guy who could be a healthy scratch in Vegas. He could be a fourth line guy for the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, putting bias aside, I think Mason Morelli is a really good player you could have on the bottom six. I like his speed, his hustle, but leaving him away from that. Honestly, on the bottom six, there's like maybe two or three guys. When it comes to the Henderson Silver Knights, I'm not going to say Gage Quinney. I think that time is come and gone. The idea of having a Las Vegas native being on the bottom six playing for the Vegas Golden Knights, Gage Quinney kind of seems like he is, the everyday AHLer for the Vegas Golden Knights is kind of where he is at this point. Any of the young guys that Vegas has, Trevor Connolly, Jacob Demick, there's some guys, Matthew Chatterford. There are some players in Henderson that you could try to make an argument for being a bottom six forward. But if Vegas was going to trust anybody to get called up and be on the main roster, really the two guys that pop in my head would be Mason Morelli. Granted, he'll be a free agent at the end of the year. They have to bring him back. And then Giannis Roundbeer, who, like I said, ever since they drafted him being part of the inaugural Vegas Golden Knights draft class, he has been here every single year, and he has been essentially your special utility guy the Vegas Golden Knights have had, where, he could be on the Vegas Golden Knights roster when they need him, but he could also be in the Henderson Silver Knights roster when needed. So to really answer this question, I'm going to lean more towards Giannis Roundbeer for what player could be trusted to be on the bottom six. I would say it would be Giannis Roundbeer. Now, as we continue this episode here of Vegas Hockey Hub, discussing the Vegas Golden Knights roster. Now, the next question is Alex Pietrangelo's future with the team. Now, I think what this is alluding to is that because of his injury concerns that we have seen over the past year or two, is Alex Pietrangelo going to be the long-term future? Is he going to be a guy that's going to be with Vegas for the long-term haul? And really, to answer this question in about 30 seconds, he has a no-movement clause, and he is signed for the next 3 years. So when it comes to Alex Pietrangelo, I don't think it has anything to do with his injuries or even his health. It has to do with the fact that he's signed to a certain amount of years, and the Vegas Golden Knights could not move him, could not do anything with him, regardless of what happens. He could even be on the third defensive pairing by the end of his contract, and he is still going to be a Vegas Golden Knight. Now, the way to really answer this question and the way it should have been worded is Alex Pietrangelo going to be a first defensive pairing in the long-term future for Vegas? And that answer is no. Shea Theodore and Braden McNabb have really been the first defensive pairing when you really look at it. Pietrangelo and Hanifin as the second defensive pairing, and then Haig and Whitecloud on the third pairing. So if you really want to look at it that way, I think, moving forward, because we know that Theodore and McNabb, there's going to be some question marks there, but it shouldn't be. They're misfits. They have been on the roster for so long. They've been on the team for so long. So I really don't think that there is any concern about Petrangelo and when it comes to Theodore and McNabb. Hanifin, he was given that deal after they traded for him. Whitecloud is locked up. Haig is currently locked up, but he's supposed to be a free agent at the end of this year. So, in all honesty, when it comes to Petrangelo, his first defensive pairing days, I think, could be, kind of gone after this year. McNabb and Theodore should be on that role. Now, speaking of Shea Theodore, and this is kind of a good, pivot and kind of leading into Shea Theodore, this question is Shea Theodore a top 100 player in the league? Now, I'm not going to break down every single player. I'm not going to go from 1 all the way down to 100. But looking at the rankings that we have on certain websites and based off of what we have seen with the Vegas Golden Knights, I would say that Shea Theodore is around the 80 to 95 range when it comes to the top 100 players in the league. So to answer this question, it would be a yes on Shea Theodore. I mean, I think 94th overall is where they had Shea Theodore when they did their ranking of the top 100 players in the NHL. I think on CBS Sports, that is where that was. But yeah, when it comes to Shea Theodore, he's on the back end of the top 100 list, but he is for sure on that top 100. Just like Tomas Hertl, he would be on that top 100 list. Depending on who you ask, Mark Stone's going to be, somewhere in that top 50. Jack Eichel could be anywhere from, top 25 to like borderline top 10. But yeah, Shea Theodore is a top 100 player in the league. Should the Vegas Golden Knights re-sign Ilya Samsonov after this season? And not to sound like a broken record, to not bring up, what I said for Tanner Pearson and for what I said for Alexander Holtz, but this honestly depends on what McCrimmon and what McPhee and what Cassidy think his value is for the long-term future. Now, when you're a backup goaltender, the job security is not as great as being a starting goaltender. In other words, Aiden Hill is going to have more priority and more job security than Ilya Samsonov would have job security and priority. And you also got to remember that when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights, when it comes to their goaltending, they have about 5 or 6 guys in the minors, and they even have 1 or 2 guys currently in juniors or overseas that are, waiting their turn. So for Ilya Samsonov, unless he somehow makes incredible starts moving forward, if there's even a chance that he starts games moving forward that kind of prove his value, it really depends on what the general manager wants to do. Now, if you ask me, I'm going to say no. I don't think that the Vegas are going to keep him. I think that he is a one and done. After the Logan Thompson situation, they kind of had to pivot and have a quick signing after that. So Ilya Samsonov was on the market, gave him that 1-year deal for about $1 million. And the last question on this show, and this is about goaltending, is there any goalie in the minors that is ready for the NHL? Now, I'm excluding Akira Schmid because, NHL, AHL, two-way, technically that doesn't count because, NHL caliber, Akira Schmid, we've seen him, NHL already. I think what this is asking is that between, Jesper Beckman, Carl Lindbaum, Isaiah Seville, when it comes to Papirny, who else am I thinking about? Cameron Whitehead, Pavel Moisevich. Do I think that any of these guys are ready for the NHL this year? No. Do I think that Carl Lindbaum could be ready next season? I think it's possible. Do I think that Pavel Moisevich could be ready in a few years? Yes. But I will say if you're basing off of this year, I think you're not going to see any of these guys that are in the minors being in the NHL and being ready for this year. Next year, maybe. So this is our show discussing the Vegas Golden Knights roster. Just want to answer these questions real quick. Just want to do a quick video. And until next time, go Knights, go. And continue watching here on Vegas Hockey Hub.
PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.